episode number 146, the Underverse of Being You and the World. This morning, Deborah and I are going to be talking about the practice of being you and living into the underverse of who you are so you can bring that into the universe that's the larger collective. All too often, we keep ourselves hidden because we don't feel like we fit with the universe. We go into comparing and competing and we shut ourselves down. So, I'm Kathleen Wiley, a Jungian psychoanalyst in North Carolina. I'm here with Deborah Henson-Conant, a composer, a mentor, a coach. We both play the harp, and that is why we call this Jung at Heart. And every week we come together, or almost every week, with a question. We don't have answers, but we come together with a question to explore about a topic that is meaningful for what's going on in our life and the lives of the people that we work with. And this morning we came up with this idea of underverse, being an underverse. So, Deborah, do you want to pick up there?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because when you were talking about, kind of, I think you said sort of hiding ourselves or bringing ourselves out in the world. And I think a lot of times I don't know who I am, or I feel that whatever of me is showing is the thing that's the problem. And yet at the same time, I am teaching harpists and others how to utilize music and stories to actually express who they are. So I'm teaching one thing, teaching the discovery of one thing because I can see it in others. I can see when someone is shining through. I can see when, oh my God, that's you. That's amazing. That's a thing that's natural to you. That's when you are in connection with you. But I can't see it in myself. And I think this is true for many of us. And that's often my role as a coach in Hip Hop Academy is to actually say, hey, you're seeing everything you think is wrong or everything that's not there. And my role is to say, hey, look at this. This is you. Look at this. This is you. This is easy for you. And you can pull this out. And then as a composer, part of what I'm doing is finding, I mean, if I'm writing a musical, I'm telling a story that's deeply important to me. But when I'm teaching people how to create music or how to take my own pieces and deconstruct them so that they can play it at whatever level they're at, I'm helping people deconstruct so that they can embody or connect or, so that they can actually come out at who they are right now, which is right now. And even at this very moment, I'm like, oh my God, I'm not being understood. Then that's like my idea. I can't express myself clearly if I'm not making. So it's the you is often the hardest thing to see. And if you don't have someone showing it to you, it can seem like you is the worst thing to put out in the world. Like that's the shameful part of you. Like, for example, I, I play the harp, of course, but I love to sing. I love to I love the physicality of it. I love, to bask in it. And yet I would be embarrassed to actually play as I envision, and not only because I envision this, like that I'm a dancer with an instrument, or like I'm a centaur with and the harp is my horse, but because that seems so weird to me, I haven't even explored that art form.
Mm, mm.
Help, Kathleen! I'm in a hole now. Get me out.
Well, my mind is lingering on your use of the word deconstruction,
Right.
and that in Jungian analysis, when people come into analysis, one of the first stages of analysis, and that thus people's individuation process, individuation meaning to fully embody their essence, is deconstructing their sense of self that's tied into their persona, to the roles that they've adopted vis-a-vis what they've learned they should be from the universe of the outside world. And so that in order to find yourself in the underverse of who you are, who I am, I have to be willing to deconstruct, get disidentified with the roles I have, whether it's the role of daughter, the role of wife, the role of mother, the role of harpist, the role of analyst, whatever the role is, that I have to recognize that there's something much broader, bigger, deeper, greater, expansive in me than the ideal, usually adopted from the collective universe of what I should be when I do that thing. So, in a way, what you're talking about is somewhere you are at least in touch in the underverse of you with a desire to have a more creative, playful relationship to the harp. And that actually is one of the comments I often get when people tell me they watch Young at Harp and what they love about it. They say they love our playfulness, that they love that it's not deep and serious, but that it's playful and that we explore. And so there's something in you that has that desire. And then the attachment to the persona of harpist and what it should be automatically judges it as, I think you used the word weird, you know. And so it short circuits it. So part of living into the underverse of who we are is we have to risk deconstructing the persona prescribed according to the universe, the outer collective. The paradox is all great creatives do exactly that, is that they actually let go of the collective idea and way of how it should be done and should look like and the persona. And they tap into the deeper reservoir of their underverse and who they are. And that place, they tap into other aspects of reality that they then bring up and out in relationship to the universe, the collective. I mean, you did that with the harp. You did that with, when you created the DHC light with Comac, So it actually is the willingness to deconstruct, step outside of, get underneath the collective expectations, roles, ideas that we could call the universe, to really look at what's one's own specific subjective relationship to the energy.
It's interesting because this started out because I this morning got an email that was like, okay, welcome to the judging panel of the blah 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 blah, and here's all the other judges who. And the first thing I thought somehow I was going to be judged, and then I saw my name on the judging panel, and I started going into thinking about how we first start playing an instrument and how we do pour ourselves into, like I poured myself into two particular people. One was Leonard Bernstein and the other was a man named Ken Nordine, because these were these sort of marvelous they had an engagement with musical storytelling that I saw for myself. And so, for a long time, it was me kind of being me within that. And at the same time, being me within the body of my mother, because I could see how she moved in the world and I could see how she would transform between being a human person and being a musician, and what that looked like. And yeah, and then but one of the things that I'm hearing you talk about when we talk about that sort of what we fit, and then finding the distinction, being able to distinguish between what is me and what is who I think I'm supposed to look like, what I think I'm supposed to look like.
Right.
And I'm thinking about all the ways that we can do that. Like, I'm thinking that as I said that, I thought there are things I noticed. My ex had 3 kids, and whenever I would create something, whether it was a room or I would build things, and I could see how they engaged with them, and they would come in, and they would, if it was something they liked, it was like, this is for me. And they would go and they would inhabit it. Like, I built something in a window seat or something like that. And they could just, oh, this is mine. And they would just like hunch down in it. It was somehow they engaged with it. This is me. And I noticed that, like, cowboy boots, they were like me, like boots were me ever since I was a little kid. There's something when I have boots on, like, I just feel some kind of boots, I don't care. And so how do we find that underverse, and then how to come through it? So constantly I'm looking at the technical, how we hold ourselves back technically, or because I noticed that there's this kind of thing with learning an instrument, at least a harp, where you learn something, and as soon as you learn it, it's not good enough. There's got to be more. And so you're constantly within that, I'm never where I need to be, and you're never playing with what you have. And part of what I'm constantly teaching is, I teach you this, and that is a universe of stuff. You learn to do this, you can do it down here, you can do it up here, you can do it all over. You learn to do this, and you can then play with it. As soon as you learn to do this, you can do this. You can put them together. And so any one thing, if you can like ground in it, it can become a universe.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the point of that universe? The point of that universe is to be able to come through it. Is so it becomes, your engagement with something becomes a way for you to be expressive of who you are. But what happens is we engage with it the opposite way. I will use it to hide myself. I will use it to hide behind, so that I never have to be seen, because the more I'm seeing, the more it's not a good thing. Like that's well, yeah, that's kind of what I mean. Then it's like embarrassing. There's something about it that's embarrassing. But sometimes I can break through. Like, I mean, like when I created Baroque Flamenco, I was like, there was a model though. When I came to the harp, I looked at the repertoire. I got to be a certain good, like a year or so, and I was like, okay, so now where's the show-offy piece? Like, I want the, like the, I had seen enough virtuoso players of other things, piano and violin, to know that there were virtuosic gestures, and that it was fun to inhabit that. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't there. So much was not there on the harp. Where's the thing you get to move around with? Where's the thing that you get to engage with like this? Because that was the engagement that seemed fun about playing an instrument. And so that's why I went about building those things, mm-hmm. whether it was the instrument or whether it was just to be able to physically inhabit that playing of the harp that way. But that's my way. That's the way I wanted to. And each of these constructs, like even Baroque Flamenco, big, flashy, like, bam, what I'm going to, like, that's how I want to engage with it. But that same thing is this. Like, those two things are the same thing. Mm-hmm. In terms of, I don't even know how to describe. To me, it's the same thing. This is the same as that. maybe just because it's the same harmonically, it's just a different style of expressing it. And if you can break it down, deconstruct it to what it is harmonically, physically, I don't know. I then you can express it in your own way. I know you can take anything and express it in your own way. It just can be very hard to deconstruct it. Like I can deconstruct music and say, this or this is the same as this, but I can't do it with other things. I'm stuck thinking, well, social media is getting 25 gazillion hits on something. I mean, that's the value there. Like I'm stuck there.
Yeah. Yeah, part of what occurs to me again is when one leaves the underverse of oneself, one loses connection to one's essence. And one has to be connected to
Mm,
one's essence in order to know one's purpose and one's ethos and one's commitment and value in the world. And so, the minute we go to an ideal of the value of social media is 25,000 hits, which, there are people out there who say that. I mean,
I mean,
it's
20,
not
25 gazillion, not just
25
25,000.
gazillion
Gazillion.
hits.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. A gazillion's much more than a million or a thousand. Um, then, I mean, because there's a voice out there in the universe, in the collective that says that. But the problem is the minute that we try to move from the outside collective in relationship to anything, whether it's social media, the harp, our own health, whatever it is, we lose connection to our own energy and our own essence, which is our energy center, which informs us about, okay, but what is natural for me? What does work best for me? Uh, I mean, in our personal life, you probably, I have, um, there may be people we're around who eat meat, and if they don't eat meat, they get sick and they have, low energy. And when if I eat much meat, I get sick. It's the
Mhm.
opposite, but it's knowing what's our own underverse, what is that sense in us, and if we can find that, then if I bring that to Baroque flamenco, for instance, or any piece of music that I
Mhm. Mhm.
play, then it's going to be a very different experience for me than if I sit down disconnected from essence and start
Mm.
with this idealized version in my head or on paper of what it's supposed to be like, you
We
know?
got I'm gonna pull up
Yeah,
this, and one of the things
yeah,
that we really love about this format is that we can have a conversation with you.
yeah.
If you're on one of the streams where you can respond, we can actually pull you up and pull you into the conversation, which is beautiful. So Victoria's saying, I agree with Kathleen that what we do needs to connect with our own essence. Correct. From correct. You're right, Victoria. Of course you are. For me, I care that what I do reflects my core values. I agree. I agree. And my struggle is I can get so like, oh, you're supposed to do it this way, or this is what's important. Especially if I think it, rather, as you were talking, Kathleen, I was thinking, I teach people to play. I literally teach people to play with things. And yet I am afraid to play
Right.
with certain things. I'm afraid that I will look bad, or I will humiliate myself, or I
Mhm,
will then look back at myself and be like, how could you have done that? Or I
mhm.
mean, all those same things that I hear other people saying. And yet, you know, Victoria's saying, as we connect with our essence, I mean, this is literally what I teach. And of course, I teach it because I'm struggling with it, because I learn from it. It needs to connect with our own essence. And I think that's what we're talking about today, the underverse, how we can do that. For me, I care what I do reflects my core values. And you're right. And I think it's really interesting. That's what I think I was saying before about if we're not connecting it with our core values, then what we're showing is the fear. Like we're walking out on stage. This is what I was saying with my friend. We think we're walking out there and showing what we're doing, but actually we're walking out there and saying, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared.
Yeah, and you know, it makes me think about how the root of the word courage comes from the French word coeur for heart.
Mm-hmm.
That to
Mm-hmm.
have courage means that we move from our heart. And I know for me that um, I finally got an Instagram account, Inner Divine Spirit, for those of you who are listening to follow me on Instagram. And what I do is I make little short reels that say one way to connect with the inner divine spirit today and every day is. And then I'll give a tip.
Wow. I
Or
love
I
it.
offer quotes from my books or other quotes that I think are meaningful in supporting us living out of our divine essence. So once I thought, okay, how can I
Mm.
go to Instagram and bring my value, bring
Mm.
what it is that I
Mm.
want to offer in the world, that I
Mm.
feel is my call to offer in the
Mm.
world, if I want to use that
Mhm.
word, that's it expresses my essence that I can stand and have integrity about,
Hmm.
because that's the only way I have courage to do it, and to have and to make the space take my energy and the time to do it. So I think that the underverse of us is so important for our ability to live in the universe. And we're kind of using these terms, the underverse being the subjective, personal,
Mm.
and the universe being the collective, larger, objective outside of ourselves. I just want to say that from a
Yeah.
psychological perspective, that's a little bit of what we're talking about. But, the whole goal, and Jung said it, he said, in the final analysis, our life counts for something only because of the essence we embody. And if we
Mm.
do not embody that, then our life is wasted.
Mm.
So if I come to the harp, or I come to Jung at harp, or I come to my embodiment circle I
Mhm.
facilitate, or an analytic session, or I'm hiking with my husband, if I come without the essence of who I am, and I show up with some externally imposed image, okay, the hiker I've seen on TV, or the harpist I've seen on TV, or
Right.
the psychoanalyst I've watched in some movie, then I'm crippling myself.
I hear you. I believe you, and I still do it. And so, and I mean, it's really beautiful to hear you talk about this, because you talk about your Instagram, and I'm like, I want to do that, and I realize what quote stops me, which is not true because I just stop myself, is that
Mhm.
I'm always afraid that I'm going to do something technically problematic, and somebody's going to say something like, it's a shame that well, it's just a shame that you ruined your career like that, or it's a shame that they couldn't hear it, or like whatever, something like that. And it just like I and so what I realize is, there I am battling that dragon inside my head, instead of showing up for that, whoever and I could just cry for that person who I am. And it is in large and small areas. It's why I haven't published more music. Someday I have to just take a picture of all the music that's sitting there in my attic, waiting for the technically do it right, or like, oh my God, I forgot to put this on it. And I mean, the beauty of experiencing it myself is that I understand it in other people. So I can, it's not like I'm like, well, why don't you just give that up? I get that if we could, we would, and that there's a process. Obviously, that's what you're doing as a Jungian psychoanalyst. You're there to facilitate people making that connection. And as a coach, I'm there to facilitate people making that connection through an instrument. And as a performer, I'm there to facilitate that, doing that in a collective moment, in a concert. If it were easy, we would be doing that. And it's the journey that's like, it's almost the only journey. Here's Victoria is saying, I also think sometimes fears are just our guardrails.
Mm.
If I look at my fear as a guardrail, I am more likely to engage that fear and see it as a friend. Okay, well, love that. Um, so interesting. How would you engage the fear that you're going to technically do something that will then go against, that will hide whatever it is, or that will interfere with the thing itself that you're trying to express? And of course, the fear itself then gets in the way of that.
Yeah, and the previous comment, pull the one up
Oh,
before that that Victoria
sure.
put, because I think
Yeah.
you're on the right track of what she's saying.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, if we see the fear of looking bad as, okay, I don't want to look bad, so I do make sure I put on my red lipstick before we get on. Online, I try. I mean, that some it's all yes. There's a red lipstick.
Well, this is not totally red. This is something
um,
else.
but that if we can get out of the judging it and look at it as information. I'm always saying this in my embodiment circle, is that when we can get it, that whatever feeling comes up, it's just information. It's in and of itself, it's neutral. If I'm afraid of looking bad in and of itself, okay, there's that fear, huh? All right, well, let's look at what is that really about? What's that telling me? Is that grounded in reality? What piece of it do I have? Can I take action with? Which one can't I?
I love that you're able to just deconstruct it that way, because I'm like, wait a minute, get out here. But I mean, it's really wonderful because now that I'm saying that, I realize that's the character of Althea in The Golden Cage. That is who she is. She completely engages with her fear as if it is totally real.
Yeah,
And
and it
it's okay, I see. So this is nothing new, but it's always new to me. Oh, I get it. Stories with music is my language. Excuse me, that's what I've been saying my whole life.
I'm gonna make sure I have my magic wand next week.
Okay.
And we can do our magic wands too.
This is a really important tool, by the way. It's part of a hanging file, but it's like really useful for other things. Just saying. All right. I know we're coming. Oh my goodness, it's 10. All right. Oh my gosh, it's time for
It's time to settle back into the underverse of who we are and
okay.
see the beauty of how our being willing, and Victoria and others who may be doing it privately, to let
Okay.
ourselves be in relationship to the universe. It creates beauty.
All right.
That there's a yeah.
I'm going to promise, I'm going to make a commitment. I'm making a commitment that I'm going to use social media, use the internet to just do what I do, which is I tell stories with music. I love doing it. It's just what I do. And the end. Just
Yeah.
and it's just an opportunity to connect like this. I mean, this is wonderful to be able to connect with you and to Victoria. And I know there are other people watching in the moment and afterwards, because we hear those comments. And it's so beautiful to know that it's like we're on a train having this conversation and you're in the next seat and now you're sitting next to us having that
Yes.
conversation with us.
Yes.
So thank you,
Yes.
Victoria. It says, I'm a great storyteller. Well, I love stories with music. It is what moves me.
Yeah. And that's the essence of the underverse of you that the world needs, that the universe needs.
Yeah. Yeah. And often I feel like I'm trying to get ready to tell a story instead of just telling it.
Ah.
Um, Thank you, Claire. Well, thank you,
Yeah.
everybody, for being with us this morning. And Kathleen, as always, an absolute pleasure. from the moment we had our first conversation to now, I'm just so happy that that this is making it possible to continue that conversation and now open it up and have this conversation with others. And hope to see you again next week. You, Kathleen, and everybody else who's here. We're always here, almost always. Almost always around 9:30 in Eastern Standard Time. And I'll see you next week. Thank you so much. And farewell, go forth and harp on the underverse of you.